What is your most traumatic experience with a teacher? My 4th grade teacher had a reputation for making one boy in her class an unpopular scapegoat each year. Lucky me. In previous years I'd been just another kid in the playground, but within 2 months the other kids wouldn't play with me during recess. One day I refused to go outside for recess. She asked why, and I foolishly told her that the other kids didn't like me. When they came back in, she marched me to the front of the class and asked for a show of hands. Who didn't like me? 4th grade kids, mostly, did what 4th grade kids do. I broke down that night and told my mum what had happened and what had been going on all along. She marched into school the next day, got a beating that included the principal, and tore the teacher a new asshole. I was still stuck in that class, but the teacher moved on to a new victim. Funny thing how self-esteem influences academic performance. My school used to give us a Stanford Binet IQ test every year. My score dropped 10 points from 3rd to 4th grade, then rose 20 points in 5th grade when I had a nurturing teacher. If you are still alive, fuck you, Mrs. Erickson. Teacher told me I was a liar to the whole class as she didn't believe my grandmother was a World War II evacuee. She refused to believe me as she assumed my mum was younger than she looked at the time, and therefore my grandmother was younger as well. She thought my mum was in her late 20s when in reality she was in her early 40s at the time. Conversely, had a teacher when I was in primary school who couldn't believe that a student had no grandparents who were old enough to be asked about their experiences in WW2 for a project we were doing. This was in 1999ish, so not too hard to imagine that just involves having 2 generations have children in their early 20s. Literally got the parents in because she thought the child was being deliberately obstructive and didn't want to do the work. Didn't traumatize me personally, but I had a first year lecturer in classics who went out of his way to terrorize the class. His first words to us were, "I suspect as many as half of you cannot read." He then administered a test, which 2/3 of the class failed. He was not shy about voicing his rather gleeful displeasure. I did well enough to avoid his wrath, and, annoyingly, get singled out for praise. He would routinely throw questions at students who weren't paying rigorous attention in a 3-hour lecture on Friday morning, and then berate them for not knowing the answers. His comments on papers were beyond trenchant. "Are you illiterate? Do you imagine this makes sense? This is childish," etc. The unfortunate part is that he was a superb classicist. A close second was a novelist turned writing prof who hurled a girl's manuscript out of his office door, nearly hitting me in the hall, as he shouted, "This is not writing." She came out to pick up her magnus opus moments later, weeping. Great writer, self-confessed shit teacher. My favorite teacher in middle school was arrested for child pornography. He wasn't my favorite after that. He also wasn't my teacher after that. So when I was in kindergarten I didn't make it to the bathroom in time and wet myself. Went to the nurse's office, got new clothes, but instead of panties I had to wear a pull-up. Not a big deal. I guess it was a school policy for kids my age, I don't really know. When I get back to my class my teacher loudly says, "Oh good, the baby is finally back," or something like that. She also knew about the policy and asked if I was wearing a diaper so every other student could hear. I was 5 and felt a ton of shame and humiliated. I started crying and trying to get out of school a lot because of it. My teacher often referred to me as a baby for the rest of the year. Also, she would constantly ask if I needed to potty or if I was wearing a diaper, like I was a toddler or something. The horrifying thing is that you probably didn't have the social or verbal skills to explain this to your parents and understand it's something that could be stopped. What a horrible teacher. So back in first grade I was at this private school, and despite not enjoying reading I actually loved school and had a ton of friends and it was great. Got along with everyone. One day my sister stayed home sick and my parents dropped me off, and as I was walking in I said hi to the nun that taught the other first grade class. She said hi and I kept walking. As I was approaching the end of the hall she dropped her keys. I heard, so I turned around and looked. In between her and I were 2 4th grade boys I recognized from my sister's class. They started to approach her to pick up her keys when she lost it and started screaming at me. that I was rude and awful and some other terrible not so non-like things. The boys were confused. I was confused. They were closer and going to help, but she was furious that I didn't help her. I got pulled out of class to talk to the principal that day. Between her and the nun, I really thought I did something horrible. I was punished and made to feel like I murdered this nun. When my dad picked me up that day, I just started to sob, and I didn't stop until we got home and my mom and dad and sister held me. I was having a full-blown panic attack. My moral values were being questioned and I was horrified at myself. My parents were furious and they called my teacher demanding to know what happened. All she said was she wasn't sure and that I seemed to have a run-in with the nun. My parents went in the next morning for answers and we got an apology from the principal but not for the nun. And I remember standing at the counter with my big sister, terrified and sad, and this nun walks in and says being rude to me again. My sister is standing there horrified, the front office secretary is shocked, and my mom ripped this nun a new one. The nun hadn't seen my parents there. My parents went to the head father at this parish and read him the riot act. When he tried to defend the nun, they went to our bishop. He clobbered the whole school. But by then the damage was done. I was a target to the nun. Everything I did she had a problem with. I stopped being myself at school. I became very insecure and quiet. My sister and those boys took it upon themselves to check on me as often as possible. They became targets too. So at the end of the school year, my parents pulled us and we went to a new school. I never got my confidence back. And in 6th grade a new boy joined our class. Immediately I recognized him as being one of my best friends from 1st grade. He was in the nun's class. He immediately recognized me and his first words was, "Damn, Sister Thomas was a real bitch." Which for private school kids was a big deal to say. We ended up staying at the same school throughout high school, and at graduation when our elementary school group got together for a picture, he said, "You never really found yourself again after that. You should try to find it. You engage always been amazing, you just gotta find it again, so fuck you, Sister Thomas." When I was in 2nd grade, my mom died. When I was in 3rd grade, the evil witch of a teacher held me back from recess one day for something. While it was just us in the room, she asked if I went to church. I said no. She then told me that I was going to hell and would never see my mom again. I hated that bitch. I'm 65, and I still remember when I was 6 and the nun told me to wash my desk and then wring out the sponge. And when I squeezed it instead of twisting it, told the whole class that my mother was a bad mother because she had not taught me correctly. I knew if I protested that my mom was a good mom I would be punished. It still bothers me that I didn't stand up for her. Why did that nun have to put me in that position? Goddammit. Mine is more of a light-hearted traumatic. In 4th grade I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards and I had gotten the, at the time, new 3 Egyptian god cards. Well, I was caught playing with them during class and my teacher took them from me and threw them out. I was devastated after all the packs opened and cards traded to acquire them. I never forgave her. Did they ever end up being worth anything before all the reprint boxes? I would have loved to see her face if she found out they were worth some coin. This is like when Weevil threw Yuji's Exodia cards into the ocean. Say goodbye to Exodia. I was bullied really bad. Kids kept drawing awful ugly photos and leaving them on my desk with profanity towards my appearance. I had enough one day after dealing with a lot of abuse at home and the bullying at school, and when I saw another broke down crying and brought it to my teacher. She just grabbed it, looked and asked if I wanted it back. Did nothing to help, wouldn't listen to me about the constant bullying and did absolutely nothing. I was in 7th grade and still remember it to this day. Got accused of plagiarism over a paper I wrote, and didn't plagiarize, that I was really excited about because of how well I thought I did on it. Enthusiasm fully destroyed. Technically it was the vice principal, but the day my brother died, apparently he thought it would be a good idea to walk in on story time. The teacher was reading to the class, set me on his lap and tell me in front of everyone that my brother committed suicide. Dude, what a freak. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Came here for the light childhood embarrassment, left with a general sense of outrage for the human race.